Burke's Garden Century was my first big race of this fall season. It sort of kicked off my campaign. I love this particular century. It has a great origin story, but it is a fascinating century for everyone to race. It has a little bit for everyone in there, okay? So the century started years ago. Virginia Tech has currently, I guess, maybe 35,000 students, and they want about 80,000 students. So every year they have a move-in day, Virginia Tech, a move-in weekend. And this weekend, this year, it was the August 21st, Saturday, August 22nd, Sunday, when parents, family members, students return to Blacksburg, Virginia, okay? The roads get packed, right? So basically all the locals, they created a century, and this is where it is. They created a century outside of Blacksburg so that they could then race, okay? So here's where it is. Here is where it is in relation to the East Coast. It's a fascinating century. Here's Blacksburg, right? And so outside of Blacksburg, there's this fascinating road system, fascinating geographic bowl shape, if you will, out in the middle of nowhere. So it's a great place. There's literally hardly any traffic whatsoever. So a lot of people show up. I think that they might have had 200 and 250 people show up for this century, which is pretty good since it's not very well advertised at all. Okay, so this is a fascinating course in that it's basically 40 miles. So we're in the mountains of Virginia, right? But they found this road. This is 40 miles, about as flat as it can be. It's 2% grade up for this 40 miles. It has some few bumps. It has some few rollers. Then you climb over this big mountain and you go down into this bowl, which bounces around. It does some big rollers, small rollers, big rollers. And then you come out of this big climb, and then you got 40 miles at a negative 2% elevation grade to race back to the finish, okay? And so here's what the elevation profile looks like. This is actually very shallow. It looks very rough. This is 2%. And then we have this steep climb. Then we come down in the bowl. We bounce around, and then we exit the climb. And then somewhere along this way, we have to stop, right? They've got to stop and get water. My strategy was to get water outside of the bowl, okay? So most people came in, they stop a couple of times in the bowl. There's some great Mennonite or Amish shops, which are great places to get water and things of that nature, food, cheeseburgers, whatever you need. And so a lot of people stop right in there. So what's fascinating about this is that you, of course, have the kids from Virginia Tech and the race team and things of that nature, and you have all the local Sunday heroes. And so it's a very vigorous 40 miles out, okay? And so people do, run strict pace lines and things of this nature. And so this is where pacing really comes in. So, right? So I'm a parrot, right? Pacing, 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 okay? I was in the lead group all day. There were maybe 20, 30 of us in this lead group. Most of those people in the lead group should not have been there. So at mile 30, you can look around, take a survey of all the people that were riding, racing. By mile 30, you could see people's face were beet red. They were sweating way too much. They could barely talk. You could hear them visibly breathing. You could see how labored their stroke was. And so this is at mile 30. So the problem is you've got a full day in the saddle. This is a full century, which people show up to race, right? It's one of those things. It's just a fun gran fondo, but as soon as the gun goes off, people are racing, okay? And so this was my fourth or fifth time doing this, so I knew the route very well. I knew the strategies. I knew the players. I knew the Strava segment. I knew what good times were. And most importantly, I knew what I could do on this course. There was no guesswork. It was just played out by numbers. I knew exactly where I was in my fitness. I knew exactly what I could do on this course. I knew exactly where I was going to stop for my one time to get water. Okay, so how did this play out? Let's look at some data. Okay, all right. So here you can see this is my power data, right? It's going up and down everywhere. It's too surgy, right? Because this is the group nature. The people on the front, the Virginia Tech kids, they were very vigorous and they were showing up. But they treated it more like a group ride, right? So they did not treat it as a 100-mile race. It was sort of a group ride where they were going to try to be the strongest on the front and win by a war of attrition, okay? Standard group ride mentality. So there was, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them that were doing this. And so, you know, in the first 20 minutes, right, that's vigorous. I'll give that type of strategy a good go for 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes of a century race, of a 5-hour race. And so you can tell, like right here, it was very vigorous. So my average watts for this first 30 minutes were 223 average watts, which was 10 watts over of what I knew that my average watts should be at this time and what I could do for the day. So the whole policy for me was pacing, not to go out too strong, not to get caught up in their tactics and blow up my individual race. This was a 5-hour all-day race, okay? So I calmed down, right? I just was, you know, let everybody else do some things, whatever they wanted to do up front. And by about, 30 minutes, I decided, hey, I'm going to race my own race and hit my own watts. So my goal at this point was just a PR. I did not know how awesome I was going to do on this day. And so there's some rollers going out. And so you'll see I'm going up, I'm going down. By the time we get to the first climb, we did a very fast 40 miles. It was like an hour and a half to do that first 40 miles, I believe. Yeah, it was a pretty vigorous, pretty fast. You'll see my VI is 1.07, which is not ideal. I would like to be like 1.05 or below for my variability index. And so, but it was fine. I did no red flags. I'm not burning matches. I'm relaxed. I'm talking to people. I'm able to do my ABCs. So a great trick, if you don't have a power meter, at mile 30, take a deep breath. And on your exhale, if you can say the entire ABCs, then you're good. You're riding a good endurance pace, right? Which is the pace necessary for riding a century. So if you take that deep breath and you can only get to ABC, then you're riding way too hard for the day. Back up and then have a good, strong finish. All right. So I was fine, felt great, didn't even really feel the first 40 miles. Then, as predicted, all the Virginia Tech kids and a couple of other people, they really slammed this first hill. They wanted the KOM on the day on this hill. I had no idea on this climb. So they all took off and they dropped little Lee back here. I'm just by myself on this climb. I come up. I do a great descent, which was key. My key was to keep on the watts on this descent, keep going as much as possible. It's really super bendy, so I had to lay off the watts. But the goal was to really relax at my just a little bit low tempo pace for this, and then nail this descent, nail the bowl, have a great refreshing climb out of here at a low tempo, and then drill this last 40 miles. So that was my goal, and that's what I did. So we get to the top of the climb, and we go around this bowl. They decided to stop for some water. I don't know, a huge group of people stopped, so I went right on through. And so I led by myself through this bowl the most of the time, and then they raced up to me, and then they decided to stop again. Okay, so I raced just my pace all through this bowl. Then there's a guy, his name is Diego Troya. He doesn't have a Garmin, no power meter, no heart rate. He doesn't race by anything, but he is probably one of the strongest cyclists on the East Coast. An amazing athlete. He's a professor at Virginia Tech, fantastic. And so all the Virginia Tech kids, everybody, they stop about here. And so it's him and I. And I've raced him before, and I love this guy. He is a gentleman. He's from Spain. He's an amazing athlete. So he, of course, drops me right here. He's probably 30, 40 pounds lighter than I am. So he, of course, drops me right here, and that's the last time I see him. So I do my pace. I come out, I stop really super quick, I get fueled up, I get water, and then I drill this last 40 miles. And I never see him again. I thought that I might see him in a couple spots, but so in this last 40 miles, I had a VI of 1.01, which means that's about as perfect as you can get on race day for pacing. There was one time that I let up. I had a sharp bend, a sharp turn, sharp right-hand turn that I had to go through, and that's what that date is. But all of this is about as perfect as you can be, and as you can see at the end, I'm trying to do bursts, so I'm riding, 30 seconds, a minute, and then I'll just get out of the saddle to loosen up and do a burst, sit back down, keep going, get up, do a burst. And so that was my pacing strategy towards the end. So on the day, Diego Troya is first place. He gets me by 4 or 5 minutes. I'm second place. And then all the Virginia Tech kids who thought that they were, you could tell, they thought that they were the shizzle out there on that day. They did not, they came in about 5 minutes after me, heads low, right? They were tired. Their strategy of whatever strategy that they thought was going to happen didn't quite work out on the day. They were there to race, and they got third, fourth, fifth, fifth, and sixth, right? So Diego Troya did this last 40 miles by himself. I did this last 40 miles by myself, and they had, I believe, 5 guys to do this last 40 miles, and they were not able to catch up on either of us. How did I end this last 40 miles so strong? I paced, right? When I realized that we were going too hard right at the beginning, I dropped my watts, right? And then, I can only do so much to do that last 40 miles strong, right? And so that was the goal, to do this last 40 miles super strong at my race day, all day pace. So my goal was 210 average watts for the day, and I ended up with my all-time 4.5 hour best watts of my entire life at 215 average watts for 4 hours and 30 minutes, right? For me, it was a fantastic day. You can see my data down here, right? So it played out. I was mostly endurance and tempo pace. This was largely built by the group surging at the beginning, and then my tempo pace. There was 2 huge climbs which I paced, right? In terms of how my heart did, I had a power to heart rate ratio of 7.88%, which on this day is really good. It got really super hot, and so that's going to, cause problems with my aerobic system, which it did. And then just the fatigue of, I was parched by the time we got out here. I only had one stop. So I only had 4 bottles for the entire day. And I would have loved to have had 5 bottles on this day. But time was crucial. And so I did not create any damage here. There was really no problems whatsoever. 7.88% is an awesome day in the saddle. And the entire race was paced at 1.05, which was an amazing day in the saddle, especially given these huge bumps here and all these rollers inside the bowl, right? But what won the day? It was pacing. When all these guys wanted to show how strong they were and have a measuring contest at the beginning, I didn't grab the bait. I didn't buy the bait. I didn't do anything with the bait. I rode my own race, and I was second on the day. Diego Troya, who is my age as well, he won the day. He did his own thing. We didn't get sucked into all the Virginia Tech group ride, blow people up, burn matches, all that stuff. A century race is an all-day race. You need to pace for the result. And so I've done this, I think I said 4 or 5 times. I finished fresher than ever, feeling great, and I did my strongest ride ever. And at the end, I felt great. All right, guys, Burke's Garden Century. Would love to see you do this next year. It is a fantastic ride.